Good morning. Please rise and body your spirit as you are willing and able for our opening congregational song, which is on page 13 in the pink songbook, We Gather Together. On piano today we have Mick Kenny. Double duty today as a facilitator and video recorder. My name is Pat White, and I will be facilitating this morning's Sunday celebration of life. We are a spiritual community philosophically based on existentialist and feminist principles dedicated to human liberation and the protection of the natural world. We make our spiritual home in the Old Stone Church, which was hand-built by the African-American Antioch East Baptist Church. We acknowledge that racial hostility drove those African-Americans from the area, and we honor them and the powerful history of this place. We also acknowledge that in the 1800s, the Muskogee Creek people were driven from this land, and we support justice for all Indigenous people. So welcome to the first existentialist congregation of Atlanta. Our opening activity this morning is going to be a brief little meditation, so I invite you to close your eyes and find yourself a comfortable position to be in as we reflect on our fluids system. There are, according to Bonnie Bainbridge Cohen, 6 primary or principal fluid states within the body, and at our most basic level is the cellular fluids. And our cellular fluid state is about awareness and about presence and beingness and rest. So closing your eyes and just finding that sense of the cellular fluid resting, aware, considering the multiplicity of ways that we are aware. We are alive. And we will now continue with our celebration of life by welcoming any people who may be here for the first time or second time. If you'd like to raise your hand and let us know who you are and how you came to be here, that would be great. Anyone want to let us know if you're here for the first or second time? Would you like to let us know who you are?
Hi, I'm John. I'm Laura. Welcome.
Welcome, yes.
We just moved in today about a month and a half ago.
So you're in the neighborhood. Well, welcome.
It's great. I really like it. Yeah.
For those who may be new, in our bulletin there is a connection card on the little flap, and if you would like to fill that out, and you can place it in the collection plate later on. But it provides an opportunity to share your contact information if you'd like to join our email list. We send out an email at the beginning of the week that shares announcements, but also the link to the recording. And for those who are viewing this after that, you just had a wonderful view of our lovely ceiling for a while. But we post those on YouTube, and they are there for whenever people may want to access those recordings of the service, which includes the featured speaker. And today's featured speaker is Reverend Bec Cranford, and we will be hearing from Bec later. Do we have any birthdays or anniversaries to celebrate today? I'm going to look on here because I know we have a listing. We recently celebrated Marcia and our fellowship minister, Marcia Mitchner's birthday, as well as Pauline Rose Clance, who's one of our founding members, and Brownie Hendricks, who's been a long-time member. So just acknowledging Brownie's birthday. We'll move on now to our next congregational song, which is on page 60 in the pink songbook. "Mine eyes have seen the glory. Please rise in body or spirit as you're willing and able." So, I believe our fellowship minister, Marcia Mitchner, is not with us this morning, and so we will go ahead now and move into our period of silent meditation. We do have candles on either side of the space if you would like to light one. This is a time for us to simply be in community with one another in silence and slowing down, taking a break. We will now have our next congregational song, which is on page 70 of the Pink Book, I Wish I Knew. Please rise in body or spirit as you're willing and able. I'll call you up in a second. Ever since I can remember, journeys have been a part of my life, and an important part of that has been understanding what a map is. And when we were on road trips when I was very young, my parents taught us early on how to read a map, what it meant, and that sort of thing. And so this idea of travel and journeying has been very present in my life. And when our speaker for today came in, she asked about the art on the walls, and I invited her to take a look at the art statement to find out more about it. But then I began to reflect on how it actually connects to the topic for today, and that is that it is evidence, both in the photos and in the clothing articles, of a journey. And in this case, it was a journey throughout DeKalb County, finding different parks and nature centers and preserves, and that the clothing has actually become the map, in a sense, painted by the earth in the spaces that we journeyed to. Reverend Bec Cranford is a humanitarian and artist in the Atlanta area. While she thinks labels are for beer, she sort of identifies as an interfaith mystic and a bapticostal misfit. Bec Cranford has worked over 15 years with those experiencing homelessness. For 7 years, she taught contextual education students at Candler School of Theology. Currently, she is a spiritual listener and a spiritual director in training. So please join me in welcoming Reverend Bec Cranford.
Well, hey, thanks for having me today. A couple things before we get started. I'm going to take off my mask, and thank you. I'm super afraid that there's going to be bats in the cave. So if I take my mask off and there's boogers, you guys can't judge me. Also, mad respect to the divine feminine. Okay, so that was the first thing. Second thing, I read through your statements, and what a lovely congregation you are. There was one that said no vulgarity or vulgar, profanity. And I lamented just a little bit in my heart, because that is my prayer language, in case you're wondering.
We don't stand by that.
Well, I don't want to offend anybody. I know I've made several faux pas coming in already this morning. But in the style of a good fool and a holy fool and a holy klutz, I apologize if I fumble through any of this. And last but not least, I'm going to tell you a story of a journey, and then I want you to think about journey, as Patton put it out there so well, and travel. And I want you to think of this in frames of symbolism and mythos that you can understand. Because my nomenclature, the language that I speak, may sound a little bit bapticostal or Christianese. But you are good translators and interpreters, and you can then cycle it into your understanding of truth. And a last disclaimer before we get started, I'm going to talk about some serious things that have happened in my life. I did notice there is tissue in the back in a restroom. If at any point in time in my story you are triggered, please do what you need to do to take care of yourself. And last but not least, everything I'm going to tell you is true. you can decide if it is real, if it was the drugs, or psychosis. Ready? Okay. So I'm 8 generations from West Georgia. I grew up in Douglas County, West Georgia. A lot of Scotch-Irish, but also those who assimilated, who were Muskogee Creek people, and then the Anawahi people who assimilated with white settlers around the 1820s and 1830s during the Cherokee land lottery in West Georgia. At the time, Douglas County was part Douglas County, part Campbell County. Campbell County is now broken into Cobb, Fulton, and Douglas County, but that is where my people kind of come from and originate from as they migrated over this way. I grew up in Douglasville, and it was a place and a time of a lot of camouflage, taxidermy, and King James Version of the Bible. My dad had rebelled against his Southern Baptist heritage in the 60s and came to Atlanta, to underground Atlanta, to experience LSD and to protest against the war. Unfortunately, he had an overdose and a mystical experience, and he met some charismatic Jesus followers who encouraged him to go to his local charismatic church. So we landed in a Pentecostal church. It was a church in Douglasville with drums. My experience as a child was very shamanic and very embodied. A lot of movement, a lot of demons, a lot of angels, a lot of supernatural. And my dad was the man behind the microphone with the big hair who said, "Come on everybody, it's time to praise the Lord." And we were in church 24/7. I kind of like Jesus. I was a little bit scared of God. And I was super frightened of my father, who never touched me, nor ever held me. But there were men in the congregation who showed me attention at 2 and 3 and 4 years old. And they said, "Shh, don't tell anyone what we're doing, because God might be mad, and your parents might be mad at you." Early on, I internalized this message that I wasn't good, or good enough for God, or good enough for my parents. Coupled with the sexual purity preaching that was going on in Pentecostal churches in the 80s in West Georgia. Every sermon was about fornication, which, by the way, that is my favorite sin, just for all of you to know. It made me feel dirty and disgusting. By the time I was 5, I shaved my head and told my mom I did not want to wear dresses. And I changed my name to Wesley because I thought that was cool. I thought I could find strength in the masculine, because for me in West Georgia, the messages I received about being a woman was that I might one day be able to be a teacher or a nurse. And those were the things, vocations that I could pursue as a woman. I was also told that I could stay in the kitchen or I could remain on my back. And I didn't like any of those. I also began to get a little bit rebellious. I know you look at me now and think I could never be rebellious or angry. It's true, I'm a new creature in Christ, praise the Lord. I'm joking. I've always been a little bit rebellious. I've always had a problem with authority. And I know you're like, no, you couldn't have a problem with authority. Just ask the Anarchist Quilting Society and they will let you know. Me and my father began to get into it young. I was maybe 11 or 12, and I was kind of gothy. Like, I had went to Little 5 Points and bought myself a pair of Doc Martens, right? The ones with 18 lace-ups. And I was super excited, and I just loved Little 5 Points because there were so many cool people there, and it felt like a very open space, and a space where people weren't judging you constantly. But like I said, me and my dad got into it a lot, and he never held me. Eventually, as a kind of queer, trans teenager, which, by the way, in the late 80s and 90s, we didn't have that language. It was like you were gay or you were straight. And I knew that I wasn't a lesbian. Like, I knew like that wasn't a thing. But I didn't know that there was a mini spectrum of sexuality and gender. It was either you're gay or you're straight, and those were the kind of dualities that I was brought up with. There wasn't anything that was more robust to include a lot of other things. So as a gender bender / queer fairy teenager in Douglas County, Georgia, I received a lot of really ugly messages. In high school, people would come up to me and say, "What are you, a boy or a girl? Are you a man or are you a woman? Are you a tranny or a dyke?" And they would say these horrible, mean things to me. And I began to resent myself. I had a lot of suicidal ideation as a teenager. But thankfully, a friend offered me marijuana. That was when I started getting high. And at first, it was an amazing, ecstatic experience. Don't mishear me. I am all for microdosing hallucinogenics and drugs under a monitored safe space to be able to discover your shadow side and to do trauma work. But you should never go pedal to the metal or balls to the wall when coming into the drug scene. I did. I should have said ovaries to the wall, excuse me, ladies. But I went high into the drug scene. I moved away because I became very depressed in college. I tried college for a while. Didn't really work out because I was studying pharmacology, basically, if you know what I'm saying. And when you're sitting in the humanities building and the floor in the philosophy room begins to lap at your feet and you get up and run out, your professor's like, "What's going on?" And you're just like, "I've got to go to the infirmary right now." And the infirmary was tired of seeing me 3 or 4 times a week. At that time, I just told them it was GHB because it was like the scary thing that the frat houses were putting out. So I never actually confessed to taking like LSD or MDMA or mescaline or peyote at school. But I became super depressed, again battling with suicidal ideation. So I left and I joined AmeriCorps. I moved to East rural Texas, in Elgin, Texas, which is off of 240 in between Austin and Houston, for those of you who may know it. It's also the sausage capital of the world, so there's that, right? And I'm not talking about bear sausage, but it is like sausage, right? Not like LJ. LJ is like bear sausage, so just FYI. Like 2 of you laughed. Do you guys not know what bears are? They're really cute. They're like really handsome, macho, sexy men that have small dogs. Little dogs, just so you know. Okay, I digress. So I'm back in Elgin, Texas. I meet a lot of really cool people there, and we're working for literacy and action in this community. And I meet these old, white, leftist advocates while I'm out there who just expand my mind. And I'm coming from like this kind of Pentecostal, Jesus-y background, but I'm also like not really into Jesus at this point in time or evangelicalism. And they open my world to justice. And I was like, wow, this is amazing. I also tried mushrooms out there for the first time, so that was exciting. And I met my best friend while I was in Texas, and her name was Queen Esther, and she was a hoodoo priestess. And she became my good friend, and she helped me a lot. Sadly and unfortunately, if you stay up for several days on methamphetamines and mushrooms, you will have a psychotic break. So I enjoyed the luxury of a 72-hour all-inclusive stay with pre-grippy socks. If you guys ever been in a fun institution, it's so exciting. I invite you to enjoy it anytime. I'm being not serious. It was a horrible experience in the 90s in Texas in a psychological institution as I was having a psychotic break. It was dehumanizing. And the whole time, I'm screaming, "The people need liberation." And they're like, "Calm down, preacher. Calm it down." Eventually, after a shot of Geodon and Haldol, I did calm down a lot. And I went to sleep in a small padded room. I experienced hell and aggression and dehumanization by every nurse that was in that facility for 10 days. And at the end of 10 days, I stood before a council of constipated old white men who said, "You will take your medicine, you will submit, or you will be a ward of the state." See, I had been planning rebellions inside the lunatic asylum. I was like, we're going to break out of St. David's in Austin, Texas, and we're going to free the rest of the world. The orderlies did not like that, and they came in regularly to shoot me down with Haldol. Slowly, I began to let it sink in that possibly I may have a mental health disorder. And I did take the medicine. I did not want to be awarded a stay. So I submitted, and I was broken, and I was sad, and I didn't want any more mystical or trippy experiences. I only wanted a rationalistic life that I could control. So I converted to atheism. I became an atheist. And I really enjoyed it. It was great. I studied a lot, and I learned a lot. But then I met Buddhists who challenged me in my atheism. And then I met people of the Lakota tribe who brought me to sweat lodges and who encouraged me to explore myself. When I went back to Georgia, I told my father of my experiences, and my father said, "You are a lesbian, Satan-worshiping devil, and you need to get out of my house." And he told this to the whole church community as well. So I did get out of his house in my truck with a gun rack, because I am from West Georgia, and I drove to Little Five Points, but not before telling him, "Bless you, bless your faith, bless your God, I'll see you later." And I didn't say bless, in case you're wondering. I experienced a very privileged homelessness in the streets of Little Five Points in 1998 through 2001. I was one of the street kids in Little Five Points. I often couch surfed. I stayed in my truck. I slept sometimes at Domino's Pizza. Sometimes I slept at the Globe, or the Masquerade, or the church. Many different clubs. I met a guy named Isaac. My name's Rebecca, and I thought it was providential. We started kicking it. I moved in with Isaac, and I sold drugs. Eventually, I had a overdose and a near-death experience. But I'm not here to preach or proselytize, just to share my truth. In the trip, in the overdose, I saw what I thought was like this Christ Bodhisattva figure who come down to help. But this guy did not look like Billy Ray Cyrus, or the other white man with a mullet who says, "Behold, I stand at the door and knock." It looked like some sort of Jack Sparrow meets Captain Bob Marley. And so at that time, I decided I wanted to follow this Christ, whatever that meant. Well, I decided to go back to church with my green hair and my Doc Martens and my piercings and my tattoos, and I walk in the door of a local church, and I was like, "Hey, what's up? I'm here to learn about God." And I think they all may have lost control of their bowels at that moment. I looked like a very angry My Little Pony, so you can understand their fear. But they welcomed me in, and they tried to love me as best as they could. And eventually I felt a vocational calling to go study. The church happened to be Pentecostal. I don't know if it was like a cosmic joke, but apparently I needed to learn some love for those persons and compassion. So I went to a Pentecostal undergraduate school and studied theology and apocalyptic literature, and then I went to their seminary. I went to the Assemblies of God Theological Seminary in Springfield, Missouri. As a green-haired, tattooed, masculine-appearing person. And let me tell you guys, it was just the best. I'm teasing, it wasn't. It was horrible. But I did have some great professors who loved me and who helped me and opened up this literature to see some mythos and some truth. I had a very public deconstruction of my faith, and I came back to Georgia. I went to the Society for Pentecostal Studies in Memphis, Tennessee, and I stood beside the Lorraine Motel, and I read the words of Dr. King. And growing up a cracker in West Georgia, the message I heard about Dr. King was very different than the one I heard in seminary. And in seminary, I realized he was a theologian, a humanitarian, an activist, and later grew on to become this sort of interfaith universalist who loved all people and eventually was killed for it. Perhaps by the state, perhaps by the oligarchy, perhaps by whatever you want to say. But his story encouraged me. and I felt like I needed to come back home. So I came back home. I reconciled with my father, sort of. I got some therapy, so that helped, right? Therapy is like a good thing. I married this Baptist guy. That's another long story for another day, so we won't talk about that. But it was a bad idea. Don't ever marry a Baptist. Just FYI. So I married this Baptist preacher. We're getting married. My dad walks me down the aisle. My dad's like, Beck, if you want to marry Dana, please do. And I was like, Dad, thanks so much. I'm still not gay, but I love you. My poor father, he thought I was gay until the day that I died. Homelessness has a lot to do with a journey. And oftentimes it doesn't have to do with housing so much as it does a lack of community and a network and safe people to be around. Yes, it's a housing issue. Yes, we live in a time of severe gentrification in the city of Atlanta. Housing costs are soaring. We're placing elderly people outside, those with disabilities, the marginalized. But what happens in homelessness is maybe I don't know someone, and maybe they don't know me. Because if I was in community with you, Patton, and you were going through a difficult time, and you trusted me, I would be able to get you groceries. And if I trusted you, I could tell you I was going through a dark time, and you might be able to get me the crisis line, or help me to get some psychiatric or psychological services. But our friends who are experiencing homelessness do not have community. They have community amongst themselves. But imagine what it might be like if our communities were about care and compassion. And yes, justice. And yes, we need to remind the powers of just action. We need to remind those who are in a position to change things to change things. There are gaps in the services of Atlanta. I'll just let you know, there's not a lot of housing for older trans people. That's a hole in our services. And we continue to see a lot of women and children experiencing homelessness. But people like you, compassionate people, can elevate the conversation around any injustice issue that has intersections in homelessness. And that could be LGBT issues, that could be systematic racism and classism, that could be ableism, that could be mental health, that could be fair housing, it could be incarceration, it could be veterans issues. All these things that you are passionate about as a human have an intersection in homelessness. Thank you for being good people. Thank you for being good humans. And lastly, thank you for listening to my long, strange trip and slightly ranty story. Thanks.
Thank you, Beck. Since we are doing great on time, I'm curious if folks would have any interest in asking any questions of Beck. Yes, Nick.
Is she still Pentecostal?
Are you still Pentecostal?
Did you say Pentecostal?
Sorry.
I took my mask back off just to sip some coffee. Warning, if you come to talk to me, I have severe halitosis because I forgot my mints at home. So you might fall over, but it won't be the Holy Spirit, it will be my breath. Am I still Pentecostal? Maybe. I'm very much a mystic. But what I found is that I have commonalities with all mystical traditions from the perennial religions of the world. So whether that's a Sufi mystic, or that's a Kabbalist, or a Pentecostal, well, some Pentecostals. But I find a lot of commonality in that. And just maybe just in the human story. Thanks for asking. Hey, Larry.
I find out now from your talk that I wasn't in the little 5 points area. I wasn't even in Georgia when you were homeless and you were around the area. This is why I'm thinking, why didn't I know you back then? Because I was up in Europe at that time. But I would like you to tell us, because I know you a lot from Facebook, and all the people that are your friends on Facebook, tell us something about that weird, wide-ranging community of people that are friends of yours on Facebook.
Yeah, so we live in a time of heightened division, right? And a lot of duality. But I have friends that are like log cabin Republicans, and I have friends who are Dixiecrats, and I have friends that are communists and Green Party members, and I have a lot of anarchist friends, and I love and respect each of these people. They have so much beauty and wisdom. And it just infuriates my friends on the far right, and it infuriates some of my friends on the left that I have friends outside of their thinking. And also, when it comes to religion, I have friends that are fundamentalist Baptists. I know you're like, what the hell is wrong with you? I don't know. Some of my relatives are fundamentalist Baptists. And some of my relatives are pagans. And some of them are astrologers. I have a really wide range of friends because I have found that within each person there is a spark of, I don't know what you want to call it, the divine. But imagine what the world would be like if I didn't think of you as the enemy, but if I thought of you as God. You're God. Maybe if I recognized you as God, I would come up to you and kneel in your presence and ask you for wisdom. Maybe I would respect you. Maybe I wouldn't objectify you or hurt you or call you the enemy. So I'm really interested in what unity, not uniformity, no, F uniformity, but what unity might look like. And what the way forward could be for humanity. Maybe we're not going to get along. There's always going to be greed. But maybe, just maybe, there could be more compassion, more understanding, and more listening. Maybe I could see you as God. Maybe you can get healing from me. Thanks, Laura.
I would also just follow up with a question pertaining to kind of how you were wrapping things up and introducing this idea of intersectionality. What's one possible thing that folks could do to change things?
I think raising the conversation changes things. So when you go and you gather, if you do gather at Thanksgiving or Christmas Kwanzaa or whatever it is that you do, raise a conversation about mental health. Talk about it. God knows we didn't talk about that stuff in the South, right? My family sure didn't talk about it, and they're all, bad crap crazy. But we didn't talk about it. So talk about mental health. Talk about affordable housing. You may sit across from your brother-in-law who may support a politician that you do not support. He may be very strong and he might be even concreted into his beliefs. But surely there is something that touches his heart somewhere. And maybe it's veterans in mental health. Maybe it's the suicide amongst veterans. Maybe that's a way to bring in your brother-in-law to begin to talk about mental health. Or other things. But elevating the conversation, I think, Patton, is the easiest thing that we can do.
Thank you so much. Anyone else?
I like your yin and yang.
Well, so I also kind of consider myself a mystic. I'm a druid and tarot card reader since, and I believe deeply in synchronicity. And like I had something that happened a couple days ago that really triggered this belief thing from my past, like my young adulthood, really. And so it was a blessing for me to hear your story today. And especially you mentioned St. David's. I was in Shoal Creek for like 3 months when I was 17, 18. So I get your sister. I know, do you know Shoal Creek? Yeah. So that was really healing for me, to hear somebody. Shoal Creek's a psychiatric hospital in Austin, Texas. So it was really healing for me as I've had this stuff coming up. I don't know if I'm in a midlife crisis, but I've had this stuff coming up, shadow stuff, childhood stuff, and it was, it was a real blessing for me to hear from you today. Thank you.
Bless you. So just a little bit more woo-woo since we're kind of in space. And we just entered into Scorpio season today. I know some of y'all are like, what? We're not even talking about that because that was based on thousands of years ago. Right, I get it. But Scorpio kind of stands for Pluto, and Pluto invites you to go to the underworld, to the shadow realm, to do some psychological work, to work on trauma, and to work on ego. And I know none of you in this room have an ego. You're all like illuminated beings who just glow with a shining light. And I know none of you in this room have. There's trauma. There's trauma in our ancestral lines. There's trauma in our families. There's trauma in our own lives. It is never too late to begin a healing journey. Thank you.
He is an amazing human.
Me? Yeah, I am. All of us are here. I was reminded while you were talking, he's not here today, but your upbringing in churches, we've got a church member here. His name is Ted. And he writes and sings and plays guitar in part. He writes comical songs. And one of his songs, it's in our new, it goes, it ain't religion if it ain't got snakes. I don't want to sit in a Sunday school where everybody's got to be safe. It ain't religion if it ain't got snakes. How can I be a believer if they never ever tested my faith? So I was reminded of his songs. Very humorous. Okay.
Thank you for that.
You're welcome.
Just so you guys know, I haven't personally handled snakes except for in my dating life. So just all right, I think that'll do it. Anybody else?
Thank you so much. And I haven't really got a question. I have just really been called to say thank you so much. I am a retired psychiatrist. I spent a lot of my career in this town working with homeless, mentally ill people. And what you have said has been so encouraging and so incredibly, such a gift. Thank you.
And thank you for being a helping professional. Can we do something unorthodox, Pat?
I think we've already treaded into that, so why not keep going?
So if you are a helper, an activist, or an advocate, or have been, or you care deeply about humanity, I would like for you, if you're able, to just lift your hand. All right, take that hand, put it on your back. Pat your back. Okay, and if you will, repeat after me. I have, I am, and I will make my world a more just place.
just interesting to me. It's like, obviously, different past, but there's a part of your life that was a part of my life as well. And I think you had mentioned about how we just kind of get that understanding among ourselves and realizing there are people that, maybe we went off in different ways, but there's a little piece of our lives that probably were very much like somebody else's, even if we don't agree with them, and that we can kind of cling on to that. So I just think you're wonderful. I love your bands, by the way. So thank you so much for everything.
Thank you. I love what you said about us kind of being connected. And I think at the heart of mysticism is this notion of oneness, which is like this weird transcendental kind of, I don't even know what you want to call it, but I remember the first time I was tripping ovaries at West Georgia University and had eaten a lot of acid. And the sky just opened up and it was like everything was interconnected. And I just had this like revelation of how connected we are to one another. And then I heard a Jewish cantor, maybe a little bapticostal child, tripping. I heard a Jewish cantor say, Shema Yisrael, Adonai Eloheinu Echad. And I was like, what is that? I ended up meeting a rabbi and I asked him about it. And he said, the Lord your God is one. And I was like, what does that even mean? Is that like a treatise on monotheism? And he said, no, like, we're all one with God. And I was like, WTF, like mind blown by this rabbi. Anyways, like I said, it might have been true, it might have been drugs, it could have been psychosis. Thanks, man.
All right, thank you, Bec, again. So, I forgot to ask if anyone had any community announcements, so I'm just going to open the floor up at this point to anyone having community announcements to share. Kathy?
Yes. Oh, do I need it? All right, I'll just be loud.
Here.
Oh, okay. It turns out that Christmas Day this year falls on a Sunday, and so we are planning on having a celebration of life. If you are going to be in town on that day, we're going to just do music and readings, and Clint's going to talk a little bit about Christmases growing up in Appalachia, and if there's something that you would like us to read, or if you have a song request, anything, and any holiday, doesn't have to be Christmas, it could be, the solstice, or Hanukkah, or
My brother's birthday.
Yeah. So,
Do you usually do a meal on Christmas Day here?
pardon me?
Do we do a meal usually here on Christmas Day?
I don't think we do that if,
Do what?
Yes,
We have in the past, but it had been put on hold for because of COVID, so.
No,
Well,
why not? Why not?
I'll leave that up to,
That'd be great if we could.
but, yeah. Anyway.
You take a vote?
We can do this outside of this particular.
Yeah, so maybe the program committee and the board can talk about the meal, but we are having a celebration of life, and Clint and I are doing readings and music, and if there's anything that would be meaningful to you that you would like us to read or, do music for, let me know, and you're also welcome to read a holiday or winter reading that is meaningful to you. And maybe I'll send you my email so you can make that available to people. Thank you. Yes.
Jan had a.
This is a reminder that next week is our Day of the Dead celebration on Sunday. So bring your pictures and your memorabilia, all of those things that remind you of the people that you love table in the front, and we'll display all of our loved ones. I love this time because I love looking at all the pictures of all the people that we've all known in our lives that have meant so much to us. And it's such a beautiful celebration to me. So please come for our Day of the Dead celebration next Sunday and bring your stuff.
Any other community announcements? All right, then we will go ahead and move on to our closing congregational song, which is on page 89 in the Pink Book, Will the Circle Be Unbroken? Please rise in body or spirit as you are willing and able. To wrap us up, I'll invite you to depart this space your lymph fluids, finding directness, clarity, and precision. Enjoy the rest of the weekend and the week ahead. Thank you so much for being with us today.